begin orientation here. We're doing the opening prayer, the land acknowledgement, the introductions, and orientation of our Lenten study teaching. And we'll be having a video from Alberta Billy, a discussion that we had on traditions and teachings of our elders in different contexts. Alberta Billy is an elder from Quadra Island in BC, and a very significant voice in the Indigenous church and in relation to the apology that began in the 1980s. And so we'll have breakout groups on that, a break and discussion and a closing prayer. I'm going to light the smudge, and I'm going to ask my Aunt Glenda to offer a prayer for us here, for everyone gathered at this time, and all those concerns. This is to bring us into centering. This is to bring us in together into a way of opening our minds, opening our hearts, that we might hear what we need to hear this evening.
Aktuyabi Waushiginabi ino akeni toga hahingi savage ni jenahike snow yamage no then inia pibigat. Near when Chasta Donanden was painted jabin and near Chandebi on chat on the shinchi no dokin snabbing us tears snow yum chakian wakande. Undanangas chimustamation tundana chichabich a hike yes no wakande. Naga ambasto who was staying at Kubi Hunt. The ande snow game piam. Nedwe opa binej washabi unchaku, ogihibi unchaku. Near when showing Asian de unchananga. Ishwaningas unchastabi chaunchan kitchen in the year in ya ahite. Kitchen in Pina which in Wakande Ushinam. Near Toga the Yamitenes near in Bicham. To Hundans in Snesh Niaming where could be hunt me. Change Gambe Haku hunting Snesh no Wakande. Yet Tanga in Yawabich. The anything she charges cones, amen.
Shnish. Thank you for that. We always begin our sessions and all of our activities with prayer. And this is an opening up that we are called on by our Creator, respecting how we have been brought here, respecting those around us and the lives that we have touched, that we might have a good influence or that we might do things to help one another. And this is our theme today, that the work that we do and the things that we engage with and we do in a good way, we do in a way that is supportive and honoring of our teaching and of our background, what we bring to the table, how we understand the world. And so it is in that spirit that we talk about the land acknowledgement. And I will read that at this time. This is the land acknowledgement that we are using, that I am developing with the process that we are going through for this session. And because we have people from different areas, from across the country, from other places, people that we have invited from different parts of the world to take part, we do a land acknowledgement that hopefully reaches out to them. And so this is our land acknowledgement for this series. As Indigenous people, we are connected to the lands by tradition and story. We are embedded in these lands by the souls of our ancestors who lived out their stories across the wide streams, open mountains, and mountaintops. Their bodies lie in state as a testament to our belonging. Around the world, our Indigenous brethren call their mountains ancestors. They call their lakes holy. These are places of origin, places that hold our creation stories. They are places of ancestral burial, places of mystery, sacred spaces imbued with spirits that our forebears knew. These places are where our ancestors made connections to the land that continue today. Today, these lands are taken away, separated from, and made off limits to their original owners. Creation suffers for our lack of stewardship and protocol. Redress is needed. Healing is needed. By our efforts today, we work toward a healed world tomorrow. We make our introductions. My name is Tony Snow. I'm the Indigenous Minister for the Chinookwins region of Southern Alberta. I am from the Stoney Nakoda First Nation. and I am a student minister studying at the Vancouver School of Theology in the Masters of Divinity program. And I work with all the churches in the Southern Alberta region with the United Church and with the Indigenous communities, the Indigenous churches as well. So I'll turn this over to John, who is the co-host of this through the Pacific Mountain region.
Just wanted to invite everybody, and as we center ourselves, we think about the time of Lent, and we're going to be transitioning to Easter. But as we learn more and do more, I just ask that each of you open yourselves up to discussion, open yourselves up to hearing from the Spirit and learning as much as you can. We thank you for coming. We will have a recording. Tony's got a lot of responsibilities, but when he's able to, the recording will go up and that'll be provided on the YouTube channel as a resource for you.
What we've been looking at through this series is the faith formation and the journey through which our adherents take part in the vision quest. And so as Christ went into the desert, as Christ prepared to discern and to wrangle with emotions and temptations and understandings that he had to work through in order to come to his ministry at the end, in order to come out of the desert with a sense of purpose and a sense of wholeness. This is the connection that we are drawing to these teachings. And this is the reason why we are taking the Assiniboine teachings, which are the 7 sacred virtues. And in these teachings, they connect with how we step into a ceremony like the vision quest and the importance of that to our spiritual practice. And so, as we discussed before in the previous episodes, the purpose of the vision quest, the process of the vision quest, here we start to look at, as we are stepping into the Palm Sunday of the Lenten time, the coming into the world. And so as we step into that world, how are we doing this in a way that engages the world around us in the state that it's at? And how do we find encouragement in the Bible and in our traditional teachings to speak of and speak from that strength of who we are? So Waushiginabi is the direction that we start with. We always start with respect. And this is respect for all life and creation, and a testament to live honorably and respectfully of one another. Waushiginabi is about courage, but it's about bravery. It's about standing up for others. And during this teaching is when we did our session for Pink Shirt Day. Waushiginabi is about fortitude, but it's about having faith in the Creator and purposefulness in life, purposefulness and trust in the long journey that we take, that we will have a fruition of our spirit and of our purpose in life, that we will come to be of use to our people. Waushiginabi is a peaceful life, talking about humility, talking about humbleness. As we come through the lesson of the vision quest, we start to take on the responsibilities of that. And with that comes a knowledge that we don't know everything, and that we step into the world in a more cautious way, in a more humble way, that we can start to learn from others what we need to know in order to share and to grow and to support one another. Waushiginabi was the session we had last week on generosity. And the generosity, the term has a lot to do with sharing, has a lot to do with giving. And so as we come out in this idea of humility, we also have a task to share what we know, to share with others the teachings that we have been brought, and that to embody that. And that is for a direction, I think, that all of us, because in the seven cardinal teaching, we don't have this this segment there of generosity. We have all different teachings, more about the force of character and the will of character, versus this idea of sharing. And Jesus in his ministry, there's a great deal there on sharing and understanding. As we look at that, while Waushiginabi is the term that we use for empathy. And that is in terms of sharing, it directs us into a connection with the creator, connection with the land, connection with one another. And so these are the core teachings that we step into as we walk out of the wilderness back into the world and looking at where we have come through. And so I just want to briefly start on the teaching from Matthew 21, and the section where it starts to talk about Jesus coming into Jerusalem. And when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village opposite you, and immediately you will find an ass tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, you shall say, 'The Lord has need of them,' and he will send them immediately." And in this story, there is a prophetic element that this had been understood, that the king would come in on the back of an ass, the donkey that rides in. And so that's the imagery that we get for Palm Sunday. But in that, he's following a very strict tradition to understand. And Matthew brings that out, that this is a fulfillment of that purpose. And so the people will recognize and the people will see that there's a imbued message that connects this story to the tradition. And so with this connection of story and tradition, we begin to see that there's a level at which we embrace these different teachings so that we can work toward understanding what they mean in our lives. And so when we start to talk about the Indigenous traditions, it's about the fulfillment of our way of life and of our teaching, so that we might begin to understand how we relate. I'm just going to show a brief video that I did with my cousin Trudy.
This is a sacred creation story. It is called the Great Mystery, Wakantanga. And it is told among the Stonies that in the beginning there was Wakantanga, whom the people call the Great Mystery, and who is the source and the origin of all life and all being. With Wakantanga sits Inktomni, who is the eldest brother of all living things. And Wakantanga, who is spirit maker, sings into being these sacred ones, the 4 winds. And these 4 who are the keepers and guardians of the 4 winds. Perzuda Tawe, who is the keeper of the sacred herbs. Tomnoga Minange, who is the keeper of songs and incense. Ozinja, the keeper of medicines. Widongshu Tawe, the keeper of the great medicine bundles. And Wakantanga, who is life maker, then sings into existence these medicine spirits. Mu, the spirit of thunder. Wahyamba, sun. Hahebi Wahyamba, moon. Ohazi, grandfather sky. Ingishin, grandmother earth. Tatanga Skan, the spirit of the great white buffalo. The 4 sacred horses. Umbiska, the great eagle. The 4 sacred colored soils of the earth. Mankoya Debi, the little people. The mouse woman. Osni Ti, the cold air spirit, and the water spirit. Wakantanga, who is life giver, then gives with life the great races of man and woman, and his special people, the Stonies, and Nakota, the first of these. The medicine voice of Wakantanga then sings into life the prairies, the foothills, the rivers, the mountains, the soil and root nations, the sacred tribes of the animal people, and all that is and lives and moves and sings. And it is said that all spirits and persons and things are born to yield their medicines to Wakantanga, who is the spirit of life. And Wakantanga asks all living things to give their hearts to his special ones, the Stony Nation. And the old ones say that Tatanga, great buffalo, was the first to yield. And it is said that all the spirits, rulers, guardians, messengers, protectors, carriers, and helpers listen to the songs of the Stony people and carry these to Wakantanga. And the spirit men say that when the people remember Wakantanga, who is the great mystery, the hunters would return with much fresh meat on their shoulders. And when the people would honor Wakantanga with much ceremony, the nights would be filled with songs and dances and games. Wakantanga watches over his special people. The spirits are made to bring the stonies, the red earth, the sacred wind, mountain air, good sun, much warmth, and many horned and antlered herds. And these Wakantanga's gifts of life to his people. The medicine power of Wakantanga is so great that Wakantanga does not come down to earth, for the earth would burst into a ball of flame. So it is said by the elders.
To my people, the circle is sacred. Everything of the creation revolves in a circle around its center, the Great Spirit. All things within this circle know of their harmony with one another except man. Only man is a determiner. He must learn of his harmony in the creation. When we are born, we have a beginning within the circle. We must learn its wisdom if we are to become whole people. In the beginning, there was Inyan, who was all power, and he was soft and formless. His spirit was Wakantanka, the great mystery. Inyan took from himself to create Maka, the earth, and the earth spirit, the mother of all things. To do this, Inyan took so much of himself that he opened his veins, and his blood, in which his powers lived, flowed from him, and he shrank and became rock and powerless, and his blood became the waters upon the earth. But his powers cannot live in water. So they separated and became Tanka, the sky. The rock, the earth, and the water are the world, and Tanka is spirit. Nagi Tanka is the great spirit, the source of all things. This was the beginning, the creation. The Great Spirit spoke to the wind. There is no direction on the earth. Your 4 strong sons must each fix a direction, so it will be known forever. And so they traveled. First to the home of thunder, the place of the bear spirit, the looking within place, and it became the west. And then to the land of the white hares, the place of strength, and the home of the buffalo spirit, the north. Then to the east, the place of illumination, from whence comes the sun, the home of the eagle spirit. And finally, they went to the place of innocence and trust, the home of the mouse spirit, and the source of life, the south. From when they began to when they finished their journey was the 4th time, the year. And having done this, the world was now whole. The Great Spirit then sent a messenger to the people. In an elder's vision, he became the pipe spirit, and he spoke, saying, I am a messenger for you people. If you respect me, I'll do right for you. I will deliver your prayers, and more that you have in your mind. This is my honor for you people. I will be called the pipe. This stem will also be a thing to talk for you. It is very sacred, for it is made of the tree, which is mankind with its many branches. When you put that tobacco in me and smoke, we will have the power to talk for you. That smoke will carry your messages and prayers to the Great Spirit. There will also be grass with a sweet scent. If you honor it, you will find it. You will make 3 braids, one for the grass, one for the stem, and one for me, the pipe. Joined together, you will burn that grass, and that smoke will ascend to the Great Spirit. The 3 of us, we will talk for you. We will be the messenger to our Creator.
This is the context into which we think about our current traditions. And in an example from one of our Indigenous students at VST would say that their experience of the traditional stories are even more fantastical than some of the documents or some of the teachings that come out of the Bible. And so we have no problem finding ourselves within these contexts and to understand the wording of the Bible, the teachings of the Bible in a way that is lived experience for our traditions and how we relate to those teachings. The one thing I wanted to as well highlight from this information is the point at which Jesus reacted in a way of empathy. And I think it's important, I think it's interesting. So when we talk about John 11, the section where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. And so there are numerous instances here where they talk about the death of Lazarus, and for 4 days lay in a tomb, and Mary and Martha, their reaction to that incident and trying to get Jesus to come to help heal Lazarus. And so I won't read the portions here, but these are the sections that I'm referring to. Here is when Mary turns to Jesus and says to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled, and he said, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. So the Jews said, see how he loved him. And this idea of Jesus moving through these emotions and seeing the pain of the people and finding a connection to that and seeing their pain and their suffering and their mourning, how that translates into his own sense of grief, and that sense of grief, knowing Lazarus and knowing the history of this family, and turning in a way that is empathetic and connecting to that way of, but looking at the community and what the community is doing, and it's an important part of that. So when Jesus tells them to take away the stone, it is a element here to say that they took away the stone, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee, for thou hast heard me. I knew that thou hearest me always, but I have said on this account of the people standing by, that they may believe that thou didst send me. When he said this, he cried in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands, feet, and bound in bandages, and his face wrapped in cloth. And so as the miracle it becomes enacted, this is the point at which in the story, in John's telling, when Jesus becomes vulnerable, when Jesus, after this point, is when he is marked for death, where people are talking against him, and the passion play starts to play out in a very significant way. And so after this miracle, after this walking out and following in this tradition, it is part of that play to go through these steps, to know that this is our path, and to know that this is the end result, and that the thinking, the wisdom, the tradition, and the teaching all become bound in this way of understanding our relation to these events. And so this is how, in the Stony sense, when we look at the fantastical stories of the creation story, those elements, and how we understand all of the culmination of our efforts being brought into bear for the willingness of people to become engaged, and the willingness of the Godhead, of our Creator, of Wakantaka, of God, to say we are meant to be in this space in a way that helps one another. And so the question that we come to is, how do you orient yourself to the world around you? Whether it is through empathy, and what is the personal cost of that empathy? We often talk about allyship and the personal cost of allyship, and whether we ever see people investing that personal cost in a way that is doing more than prayer and empathizing, but to work in a way that is fully in support, that we begin to move to a stage of living in harmony, of balancing relational interests, and of balancing systems. So as we move in the United Church into a anti-racist denomination, what are the understandings? What are the limitations around that? What are the protocols that we must observe in order to find relation? Part of that is in the Native context, is in supporting community. And so there's a strong ethic of these instances of ceremony bringing us into community, bringing us into a better relationship with one another, which is why we do the cleanse, why we do the purification, so that we might bring ourselves to a mentality where our elders, where our ancestors want us to be, and live in a way that is engaging and supporting of one another in those customs and those practices, in the way that we observe the community relations around us.
So as we go forward, I would just ask the groups, when you're contemplating what are we going to do as far as what we know now, how do we apply some of these teachings to be empathetic with one another, to understand and to listen to one another, and what is the Spirit moving us to do? What are we called to do as the church? Contemplate that as you listen to the words of our Elder Alberta Billy.
We are spiritual people. We have a connection with the Creator and the land. And everything we do and everything that we know are very spiritual. You know, we have what we call indigenous roots. We were always here, and we always knew that there was a greater spirit among us. I remember my grandmother telling me our people never leave us. And so I got to understand our people are spiritual because they have a connection. That connection is very simple. It's with what is greater than we are, but it also is connected to the land. We are caretakers of this place. We're only visiting. And while we visit, we are on our best behavior. I would not go into your home to make a mess. I would go into your home to be very respectful of you and where you live. To me, that's very simply said and done. And that's how we lived. We had it right.
As we look at reconciliation things, the church is looking at what do we need to do? What do we need to do as churches? And you could think about what does the churches need to do as far as the native communities and then the larger church. What are some of the things that we need to be thinking about?
Well, you know, for one thing, the wider church needs to understand that we have a way of life. And that way of life is that connection. But also, our ceremonies are very sacred. The ceremonies we have differ in our nations, but they have the same concept. The concept is that connection with the Creator and the land. It will always go back to that connection, no matter what it is we say or do or think. It is that connection, and everyone wants to be connected to something. I'll tell you a little story about a carver. On the images of the totem, he explained to the students of grade 1, 2, and 3 that the images on the totem represent the images that belong to certain families. For instance, in my family, we have on our totem the whale, the man, the eagle, and the foundation of all these images is the wolf. You know, wolves are family-oriented creatures, and they mate for only once in their lifetime, and they are loyal, and they have family ties. They take care of their little ones, and they take care of themselves. And to me, everything is very simply said and done. We complicate things because we think we're so smart that we solve that problem. It's not necessarily solving anything, it's understanding what it is we need to know and do while we're here. I don't know what else I can say to make that very clear, because it's very, very simple. We always had it right. We always had that connection. We knew that there was a greater being, a greater spirit in and among us. And when no other human being today can help us, we look toward our ancestors. We look toward our great eagle spirit, all the good grandmothers and all the good grandfathers of our ancestry, to come and help us, to make sure that we do things in a proper manner. I need to stress that very clearly. Everything begins with the human being, and to know that and have that connection, to have that very spiritual feeling of just knowing some things. I don't know how else to put it, but simply that children know about connection. The story that goes with that is the little child, after listening to the carver explain what the images were, non-native child spoke up and said, "Mr. Henderson, I think I know what the crest is in our family. I think it's the chicken." You see how children want to belong? Yeah, everyone wants to be connected, and that's the way it should be. We should have that connection all around the world. Do you know, because we had it right, they took it away from us. They tried so in many ways, and they still will keep on doing that until they get it. They have to understand they need to listen to us. They need to understand that we have it right.
Yeah.
And allow us to be who we are.
I remember the teachings of our elders. They say we look to nature to learn things, and we respect all things. The plants, even the plants will be praying. The fish will pray. the animals pray. And so when we observe them, we learn from them, and they have teachings.
Exactly. Very well said. And we need to always observe these things and hold them dear to our hearts because they are teachers. We are students, and that's how we learn. And when we learn that it's the right thing, we pass it on to our children. We are here for a reason. No matter what they do to our nations of people, we will always be here. I know that.
It's like the teachings of Christ when Christ came and taught many things to his disciples. And so we have been privileged with the wisdom of our people, the wisdom of the elders, the wisdom of the plants and the animals. And so I think it's really important to remember we're coming up to Lent, and we have our own observances in some of our different tribes, different nations. They have their own ceremonies that they do for fasting. And so they look at prayer not just one time a year, but throughout the year. We're always praying, we're always fasting. And I wondered if you could maybe talk a little bit about that, your experience.
It's like you and I talking together now. That is what the non-native people call prayer. We are always in communication with the Great Spirit Creator. And I see Jesus as our dear friend and companion who was a good man, just like you are and your dad is, and our people are. We are good people. Jesus was that. He walked in a good way and he taught what he believed in, and we observed. And that teaching goes on because it's a good teaching. It not only can become a good teaching, but it can become a good habit. My grandmother said, "Wouldn't you rather have a good habit than a bad habit?"
That's the parables like Christ taught about the animals, about the plants, and then it gives us instructions. And sometimes it doesn't answer our questions, but it makes us think. And I know when we go to our elders and ask about a problem, sometimes they don't answer, or they'll answer the way Christ answered. They'll tell us a story. And there's many things to learn from the story, just like learning from the Bible.
That's exactly right. When I was working with our people all across the country, I found that what you just said is the concept. Our stories are different. We tell them differently, but they have the same meaning. We just do our ceremonies different. We have our own dances. We have our own language. Everything we have belongs to us. And we need to keep that. We need to keep all these things very sacred so that the future of the unborn yet to come will have that strength of what we believed when we were young and what was taught when we were meant to listen. And so that's how the story goes. It is told over and over again. No matter how we tell the story, it has the same meaning for all of us to abide by and to live by and to know. And that's the meaning of our life. It's like the cycle of the salmon. You know, the cycle will go on. The only thing that will disturb the cycle is man if we don't take care. And you know that happens. It happens and it is happening. And we need to bring it back to where it belongs, in the right place again. Our children need to have the strength of their identity, of who they are and what they represent. Our names mean something. If we have a naming ceremony, it's not merely just to give a name. It has a meaning. And we have to respect that meaning. We have to live up to that and make sure that it's not harmed in any way or bring sadness, but always joy. And recognize that our name was given for a reason. For instance, my name, Wadzit, means precious one. And when I was growing up, that's how they made me feel. I was meant to feel very safe, very loved. I was meant to know who I was. And so the strength inside of me, I was ready for the world. And that's how we need to be with our families. Not selfish ways, but very sacred ways in making them understand this is who you are.
That's the teachings as well of Christ when he talks about the children are precious. And then they were trying to take the children away, and he said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of God." So
Yeah.
that's a really important teaching, what you just gave us. It's similar and comparative to the Hebrew, the Aramaic, the teachings of Christ.
You know, I like the way you go back and forth with that connection, because it's important that we understand what the Bible, not only what the Bible says, but I also believe that some of our stories are in that Bible.
It's really important. And that's how we are going to carry our message forward. And that's how we're going to help one another live, help one another relate, not just to ourselves, but to the land, to the ocean, to the fishes, to all things, because this is what Christ talked about. How do we want to show up, and how do we want to be in this life? And the prayers that we carry is going to be important because it resonates throughout the generations. Our forefathers, our foremothers, and our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, they're all part of that story.
It's exactly what it is. And our children need to understand that they are precious human beings that will carry on. When we're gone, they're going to say, I remember when Jon Snow said this. And that's what is important when you have those memories of how it is, how it was, how it should be, so that we can go on and on, because we're all here for a reason. Human beings are still learning how to take care of each other. And it's a process that never ends. We never stop learning. I remember Albert Lightning at UBC in Vancouver one time when he spoke. He was well into his 80s at that time. And somewhere in his talk, he made the comment, "I am still learning." At that time, I was in my early 30s. I needed to hear that. I thought, wow, that's so good to know, because I kept thinking to myself, when am I going to get it? But when he made the comment of "I'm still learning," I understood that we will go on learning. All the time we are here, we will still learn. And if we don't do it right, well, we're going to come back. So do it right the first time and make sure that teaching goes on. And I know that you're doing that, because otherwise you wouldn't be having this conversation with everyone. We always want to do what is right and what we believe in. And the way that happens is when we share what it is we believe in and make sure that it happens. We don't do things on our own. We do things together.
I think it's beautiful. This time I'm so happy that we were able to hear from you. I know that there's so many teachings that we need to share. And when I was at the conference, the ecumenical conference, Albert Lightning, Ernest Tutusis, the late Ernie Willie, they all came there. Adam Cuthan, Andrew Ahenekew. Those were in the Anglican Church. And so they came there, but they also found a profound vision. Andrew Ahenekew got a pipe at Morley, and Ernie Willie came and he sat at the sacred fire and he talked exactly the way you're talking. He talked about the importance of listening to the elders and the importance of sharing. And so that's what we wanted to do with this video and with some of the teachings that need to happen with the youth as well. We have some opportunities in the future. We're hoping to do some camps. And what we wanted to do was bring them back to the land, to canoeing, to the fire, to the camp, to nature, so that they can help find themselves and find their connection to the Great Spirit, to find their connection to the land, and have a bit of a visioning session, a pilgrimage, a journey. That's what we're hoping for the young people.
That's a very good vision, because our young people need to have that inner strength of believing in themselves. A lot of our young people have an excuse about not belonging to church or going to church because of what happened to us. But, excuses, they run out. And sooner or later, our beliefs come forward. And the young people, if they believe in themselves, that's the main thing. To believe that you are capable of bringing that inner spirit to the front of your life, of your very breathing, this inner spirit is yours. It was a God-given gift, and may we always use it in the right manner, so that when our strength becomes our reality, we're again on the right path to it, to our identity of caretakers of the land. That will always go back to the Creator and the land. That's the connection in the whole world.
And so as we reflect upon these words, these teachings, we remember that Alberta Billy, as an elder, comes from the Wai Kai Nation in British Columbia. And she was the first person in 1981 to bring forward the question about the residential schools, and said the United Church owes the Native peoples of Canada an apology for what you did to them in residential school. And this lesson that we've been living out since that time of trying to find empathy toward one another, try to find understanding toward one another, and to build a better world, build a better life as we step into the new structure of the church, as we step into the ongoing and now prevalent issues of racism, issues of equality, issues of sharing. These become a very important part of how we exist as a denomination, how we exist as a Christian people, and how we can share that in and amongst others. So I am just going to set up the breakout rooms.
Just wanted to thank Alberta Billy. We had a precious time with her. She said that her purpose was to help get this apology. And so we are very blessed to have her with us yet. And we have some more recordings of her. I'm sure Tony will be putting those together at another time, but there's so much there to unpack. And so we ask you to be open. We ask you to respect the words that she has shared with us. And they're very powerful words. So
The question is the one that we're reflecting on these this information. It says, how do we bring what we know and who we are into our sharing? How do we show up in culture, in heritage, in our families? And what are our assumptions and traditions? And we'll just welcome everyone back. And we'll take a short 5-minute bio break for people. And I'm just going to read a portion here that I think resonates with our talk tonight. And my father talked about the importance of our spiritual traditions. And he says, many bearers of Christianity teach that only man has a soul, but we Indian people believe that forms of life other than men have souls and spirits also. And so in this instance, he's writing in the 1970s, and so the language is tuned to that time. He says, a Pima Indian student, Donna Tina Kisto, who has expressed our views regarding nature and life. And she says, I am an Indian. My hair is black and my skin is brown, but I feel no inferiority before the white man. Brown is the color of the earth. Black is the color of the sky. And the life-giving rain falls. As the soil and rain bring forth food for life, so must I, Lord of nature, bring forth good into the world. All Indians are blessed at birth with a precious heritage of independence and pride. Like a costly gem, this precious heritage must be treasured. He goes on to say, the Great Spirit The Creator, in his wisdom, has given each climate its unique plant life, its unique animal life, and its men and women, and he has given them a religion which is fitting to their needs. For the Hebrews who lived in the arid lands of the Middle East, with the thorny bushes and the cool green grass near the wells and water holes for the sheep and camels, he gave a religion to suit their way of life. For the people of this great island, with the shining mountains, the pine-covered hills, the grassy plains, the flowing streams, and the fish-filled lakes, he made a home for the moose and the buffalo and the deer, and taught his red children to pray as was suited to them. And so this connection between our place and living out purposefulness in this environment and having a connection to our faith system, how we see the world, how we engage with the world is very important. Choose the comment here from Wilma that says, I was honored to share with a young man who is a teacher in our school and shared how things are changing for the better in the fact that the children are actually learning about our Indigenous in a way that's more realistic way. Then he was glad to join this opportunity. I honor our young people. And another comment from down here from Mimi. Thank you for the video with Alberta Billy. She was a good friend of my parents. Lovely lady. Her words and honesty are full of messages for us. Breakout groups are terrific and good sharing. Thank you for tonight. So here's a question. Would you be able to let Northern Spirit know when the book study is open as well? Yes, we can do that. Thank you. We look forward to the recording. Would love to listen to Alberta Billy again. She shared such wisdom. Marilyn, are you there? Marilyn Agnew, if you're there.
Hi there, Tony. Thanks. I even wrote some notes. We had a great breakout session. I was with John and Laverne, I believe was her name. No, Lynn. Lynn was with us. And I learned a lot from Lynn. She's been 14 years working with reconciliation, and feels like her church is doing really, really well. We talked about our ancestors as well. Loved talking about Alberta Billy. She's amazing. Just loved her. So humble. And being encouraged to learn about our own heritages. That's important. And we talked about that. Thanks.
I'll turn to maybe Sharon. Are you there, Sharon, with Scarborough United?
Hi, Tony. Yeah, we had an interesting discussion with the story, the layers about the residential school. Like, I've been going to these sessions for a very long time, and the layers that keep coming up every time I go to one of these circles or these sessions is just amazing to me. And I learn something every single time. And I was in a breakout room with Sheila, and she said something very interesting about how her mom was unable to speak. And as a small child, she had to do the talking for her mother. And I hope that I can bring Scarborough congregation forward into more awareness. Like, so many people say, okay, the residential schools, yeah, okay, we know it was bad. I wasn't there. I had nothing to do with it. Can we move on? And it's like, no, this is what the issue is. And so my hope is that the more stuff I learn here, the more I write down things, the more I absorb, that I will be able to take that back to my congregation and say, this is the only way to get to reconciliation, is to take this path through the forest and to fight the demons.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That was the other person I was going to ask to speak. Sheila, if you're available there.
Yes. Just to speak with, to further what Sharon said, I think people get fatigued when they hear something that has, is a talking point, when we see it in politics. And we have to remember that Christ was political and we are. And because it's about the people. And so when we hear about stories and we think that it's a long time ago, in 2014, my mother died after hearing something very horrid regarding her residential school experience. And she died with a broken heart. And she was a very devout fourth generation Anglican Cree. And she was trained in the altar guild. So she knew the linen care and how to make it and how to preserve and to do everything, an art that is almost gone. And so when we hear these stories, I'm living into this story and I'm 46. And so to be able to hold space, and which the women that were with me, is so precious. We talk about being held and we talk about our children. We are all children of God, and we need to live into this joy. And with that is a fierce love. It's an active love that we partake in. And this is an example of a circle where we are held in our stories. And my bishop, Anna Greenwood Lee, in her Lenten 2-minute weekly blog, noted that for those of us that have unprocessed emotion, it is malignancy. And so living into our story, we get to live well. We get to walk well. And that also means for the people that don't think that they're bigots when they say, don't talk about that, talk about all God's people. We all can be held in this story, and Christ is waiting for us to be there together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So my mom said before she went to the residential school, she learned respect, empathy by observing her parents and her family,
Listening.
listening to her parents and siblings. So that's how she learned respect. You have to see it to learn how, like children need to see it, need to see respect. Like right now in this day and age, Black Lives Matter, we see lots of violence, and that's what the children are seeing, the youth. So they're not seeing respect that my mom grew up with before she went to the residential school. So we need to show respect to each other and show empathy so our children can learn to, because they're observing us. They observe and they see what's going on. We think they don't know anything, but they do.
This is a closing off for this talk and this understanding, and it connects very much to the lessons that we've been hearing from our elders in this from Ephesians 4. I therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all lowliness and meekness, with patience, forbearing one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And so this connection between our action, our demeanor, our openness, and working in love of one another to bring unity of the Spirit and to bring peace to our lessons. This is really the essence of our work today and what we've been examining in the study. And I will share a prayer that Alberta Billy offered as a closing to this time, to this session.
I will pray the Great Spirit, Creator God of all of us and everything. I will give thanks for this day. I give thanks and am grateful that you allowed us all to come safely through the night. I am thankful that we can come together in this technology way to share our hearts, our minds, our souls, and our spirits, to help us understand that we will always learn from each other and respect that learning and give thanks for that learning. Give thanks and be grateful for one another. We are all here for a reason. We all have a purpose. And when we find that purpose, may we always give gratitude to where it belongs. We don't talk about ourselves because people are watching us. We need to remember and respect everything that was taught is very spiritual, very powerful. Be careful how you use that teaching. And remember always, the Great Spirit is in and among us. Our people never leave us. They are always with us. Their teaching will always remain in our hearts, and we'll give thanks for that. I ask for blessings on John and his family and his people. Also for blessings for Mimi and her family and our church family and all the people that come to our mind. We ask for blessings of healing for their mind, their body, their soul, and their spirit. And I thank you, Great Spirit Creator, for these people that we are connected to right now. We ask for blessings upon them and keep them safe, keep them healthy, keep them healthy. Great Spirit Creator, I thank you and I give you great Gelaketla.
Hawa.
Iramaya Tunkashina Wakantanka Tateatopa Kiyawa Makashna. Thank you for hearing our elders' prayers and all of our hearts together as one. Wawokia Witemi Tiramaya Tiramaya Omakiapo Makiapo Wopira Hawa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the gift of your elder's voice and of the your presence here to help share what we have been looking at today for the time that our faith brings us for Lent and for the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of our elders, the teachings of our people. How important that is for all of us. So thank you. Join us in the closing prayer for this session.
Okay.
Chingabis. Wonchageze. Tawamcheze. Jesus Christ. Tabansje. Tachangu wakan. Wahubunchakie. Wahanchine. Na ing chabiche. Nangahans. Nangu. Etiania. Etias. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And we will gather again next week for our final session of Lent and for the closing of this series. And we will be discussing our word for wisdom that brings us all these teachings together. And so we look forward to that. And for your participation, we will have the video up as soon as possible, given the things that are going on this week. But we thank everyone for coming, and we will see you again. Thank you.
Ishnish, thank you.
Snish, thank you.